Okay, so this is the next day after I filmed part one of this series with the Genesis. This is part two with the Sega Saturn pickups for 2024. Um, when I start these videos, I'm going to tell how many games I had for the system when the year started because I think context is important. So, like with the Genesis, I only had 4 games when 2024 started. When 2024 started with the Saturn, I had about 70 games. Now I say about because the Saturn is probably the most difficult system for me to give an honest bookkeeping of because I count Japanese games also, and this is the system I have the most Japanese games for. Now, when you hear a person who collects Saturn games semi-casually, like I do, say that they have a bunch of Japanese games, you probably think they got into the system recently, and they have basically all Japanese games. So that's not true for me. I've had my Saturn since December of 1995. It was my fourth. It was my Christmas present when I was 4. It's my first video game system. So out of my 70 games when the year started, about 15 of those were Japanese games. But like I said, it's the most complicated bookkeeping. So about, like in my counting, this is 71 through 81, but you could reasonably count that different ways. So enough backstory. Let's go on to the pickups. I don't have anything super crazy. Let's ignore that one. I don't have anything super crazy in terms of pickups for this year. So my first Saturn pickup of the year was Soviet Strike, which I bought on April 4th at Retro Raven in Macon for $30. That was probably about market rate at the time, which is why I got it. So a lot of you know, or any of you who have ever messed with a Saturn will probably know why I'm not going to open any of these cases unless I have something to show you. So I haven't done much case work on these yet. I have gotten behind on that, but this isn't a real tray. So unless I'm showing you something in particular, I'm not going to open these. I have to replace that tray because this is a replacement case. And I don't mind replacement cases, it's fine. I just want to know, 1, that it is a replacement case, and 2, I want the tray to be real because most replacement trays don't have the CD logo on them. Okay, so Soviet Strike, $30. Later that month, I went back to Macon to Retro Raven, and I got Madden 98 and NHL 97, also from Retro Raven. I paid 13. Well, actually, those are in the wrong order. How do I like that? I paid $13 for NHL 97 and 20 for Madden 98. Those aren't like the greatest prices in the world, but considering shipping from eBay, it's whatever. I ran up on them. They were in decent shape. And if the things that were wrong I could fix, I went ahead and got them. I want to check these because they do use replacement cases. So NHL 97, I have to replace the tray. And I think I do on this one too. No, I've already done it. It's the other way around. All right, so for a long time, I had that sticker on the front as a reminder to replace that tray. But one tray to replace, this one's good. They're sports games. There's not much to say about this. I skipped talking about Desert Strike, or Soviet Strike, so I'll do that quickly. Soviet Strike is a helicopter mission combat style game by EA. It actually was on my watch list for the Saturn. Like, it was something I was actually kind of particularly happy to find. So I keep a list of like 12 games, 10 to 12 games that I'm actively looking for at any given time. And Soviet Strike was on that list when I found it. I didn't know it was a series. I knew it was a sequel. So most people know Desert Strike on the Genesis, and I knew it was a sequel to that. What I did not know at the time was that there are 2 games in between. Soviet Strike is probably not quite as good as Desert Strike. The controls are a little wonky, but not a bad game. And then we get to the craziest pickup of the year. The only like really super interesting thing down here is I found a copy of Enemy Zero locally on April the 15th for $75. I need to open this one. So this game is in excellent condition. All inserts, marketing inserts, that kind of stuff. Disc 1, Disc 2, Disc 3, Disc 0. Everything's there. Unbelievably happy with that pickup. So Enemy Zero is what Sega Saturn Zero referred to as a manor mystery game. I think that's how they phrased it. Mansion mystery game. It's interesting. It's like a first person, like the old school term would be adventure style game, like point and click, but it's a lot of it's FMV based. The controls, once again, are wonky. Ambition before adhesion with some of these early 3D games. I haven't played very far into it just because I feel like I need to sit down and read the manual to really figure out the controls. Very happy to have it, though, for $75. All right, so these were my 4 pickups for April. I bought those 3 different times in April. The next spurt of pickups was in June. I got these 2 games on June 7th in Savannah. All right, so Robotica was also a game that was on my watch list. I bought it for $25. It's in decent shape, a little crack in the case. Nothing too crazy. So it looks yellowed. It's not. Acclaim games on the Saturn tend to be pretty inconsistent with their coloring. They tend to be darker, I guess I should say. Robotica is a first-person shooter, basically. It's randomly generated levels, and you operate a robot tank type thing, I guess, for lack of a better term. I was interested in picking this game up. This game has sort of a polarizing response. I actually think it's pretty good. So I think if you think this game kind of is shitty, stinky, you're not really looking at the context of the time. Like, to have a shooter type game that controls that well with not 2, not 1, but 0 sticks, I think is pretty darn good. The gameplay is probably not the most riveting thing in the world, which may also be part of the polarized response of that it probably gets quite repetitive to play dark, randomly generated hallways over and over and over again for hours. But in short bursts, I think the game is actually quite good. I bought that at Planet Fun for $25 on June 7th. Also on June 7th, I bought Off-Road Interceptor Extreme at Pop Vault for $22. This is another game that was on my watch list. I'm not going to open this one, but everything's in there. All inserts. Off-World was originally a 3DO game. I would call it like a vehicular combat mission game, sort of. This is some pretty 90s box art, by the way. It's kind of like Road Rash in that it's not really 3D. Like, you're driving fake 3D forward. You can only drive forward, I guess is what I'm saying. Probably not the greatest game. A lot of people talk about the F&B cutscene stuff in this game being really cringy, and yeah, some of it is, but the gameplay isn't too bad. It's fine for $20-something. I'm happy with it. A decent addition to the library. Interesting thing about these games from Pop Vault, because there's several of them. Whoever bought these traded them all in on the same day, so they came from the same person's collection, like whoever bought them originally. And a lot of them had the barcodes marked through. So where did he find these, and where did he find them on sale? deep sale probably. The cases tell a story. And then finally, this bottom row, bunch of sports games and a terrible fighting game. I bought these all on October 24th, also from Pop Vault, also in Savannah. So I guess I'll talk about these collectively for a second. Out of these 5, 3 of them I was like sort of excited to pick up, and 2 of them I kind of was like, well, at this price, whatever. So the 3 that I was excited about were World Series Baseball, NHL Power Play 96, and Sega Worldwide Soccer 97. And they all have sort of similar reasons as to why. All right, so first game, World Series Baseball. Not as good as the second one, but still pretty decent baseball game. Why was I excited about this game? It's published by Sega. I paid $16 for this game. It's in really good shape. Happy with that pickup. So this game kind of pales in comparison to the second one. This game only has 4 stadiums instead of the either 28 or 30. I'm not sure if the last 2 expansion teams have been added yet. But either way, huge expansion on the stadiums between the first and second games. Quarterback attack, I paid $22 for this game. It's also all there. So this is a full motion video football game, a digital picture special. Basically, you can only play the same game over and over again between 2 teams, and that's pretty limiting in terms of gameplay scope. But I'm going to quote Pandemonium and say you will never play another game like this. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. It's just there's nothing else quite like quarterback attack. It's actually kind of hard to even figure out how to complete a pass in this game. I felt a great sense of accomplishment the first time I completed a pass. All right, next up, Rise to Resurrection. I paid $23 for this game. That is probably more than it's worth in terms of gameplay. Like, that's not a terrible price, but this is a really terrible fighting game. So at the time, with games journalism, I'd say the common insult for games that didn't look good graphically is that they looked like either Super Nintendo or Genesis games. But basically, graphics were such a powerful factor at the time about how games were judged. And in a modern context, that stuff kind of doesn't matter as much because all of these games look crusty. So while I do think about how the graphics look for the Saturn, the gameplay matters more to me. So this game looks like a Super Nintendo game. That is absolutely a true statement, and I'm sure that reviews at the time said that. But what matters more to me is that the gameplay is not good. If you compare this to, say, the Sega fighters or the Capcom fighters or whatever on the system, I'm not as into the Capcom stuff, but I have played some of them. Those games all play great. This game plays like dog doo-doo. Terrible game, but something to have for the collection. And on the Saturn, it's probably the only system that I have that nebulous of a reason of wanting it, but this is a Saturn game, so I want it, and if I find it for a decent price, I will probably buy it. So NHL Power Play 96. This game was not published by Sega, but it has a Sega connection. So, complicated. Well, give me just a second. Yeah, that one also had the barcode struck through. That's what I was looking at. There are 5 hockey games on the Saturn. The first Sega published game is NHL All-Star Hockey, which if it had a year on it would probably be 95, as in the title. It came out in 95. It's a really terrible hockey game. So Sega saw this game made by Radical Entertainment, published by Virgin, and said, let's just hire those guys to make our next hockey game. And they would go on to make NHL All-Star Hockey 98. So, in a way, NHL All-Star Hockey 98, which is probably the best hockey game on the Saturn, can trace its lineage to two separate games. From a publishing sense, it can trace it to NHL All-Star Hockey. And from a development sense, it can trace it to NHL Power Play 96, which is why I was interested in this game. I paid $17 for that. And the last pickup for 2024, I paid $18 for Sega Worldwide Soccer 97, which I was interested in particularly because it is a Sega published game. This game is a big step up from Sega Worldwide Soccer, or let me get the name right, just because it's such an impressive name. Worldwide Soccer Sega International Victory Goal Edition, which was a launch game in 1995. This game came out, I think, a year and a half later. I think this game came out at the end of 96, because there is a 98. This game's a big step up. Graphics are way better. Gameplay's way better. Just in general, a much better game. I was actually really impressed by how much I liked this game when I stuck it in the system, gave it a spin. Much better than the launch version. When I do the launch video in May and play the 6 launch games, the soccer game's kind of going to be a little bit of a slog. Not this one, the game in the series before this. So those were my Saturn pickups for 24. I'm going to quickly run through dates and prices one more time in case I missed any. All right, Soviet Strike I bought for $25 at Retro, or $30 at Retro Raven in April. NHL 97 and Madden 98 I bought at a separate trip at Retro Raven for $13 and $20. Enemy Zero I bought in April locally for $75. I bought these two on a trip to Savannah. In June, I bought Robotica for $25, Off-World for $22. And the bottom row, I bought on a trip to Savannah in October, 16, 22, 23, 17, 18. So not the greatest year for Saturn pickups, but I did get a good quantity of games. And even though a lot of these are sports games, some of them I had interest in for certain reasons. 3 of these were on my watch list, and that's just like a crazy pickup I didn't expect to find. So I'm pretty happy with this.